Hi everybody, I'm Paul Gottsegan here with Steve Hall. Hello Steve.
Hey Paul, great seeing you.
Great seeing you, and this is a third year in a row. We're doing the next year's trends. Now we're doing it for 2024. I can't believe how quickly a year flew by.
I love it. Let's just not go back to see how well we did in 2023.
No grading, no fair grading.
Exactly.
Well,
let's look forward.
Yeah, look, it's getting near the holiday season. Everybody's thinking about what are the big trends, what are the big trends upcoming. You've been one of the industry leaders in tracking and thinking through these trends. So let's get into it. I know that there's been a big change in the growth of managed services over the last year. I thought managed services was going to shrink a little bit and X as a service, everything as a service was going to take over, which there's still a big trend there, but it was an interesting year for that. And what happened and what's going to happen going forward?
Well, I think that's a great place to start because I think most people would look at trends and say AI or Gen AI. But quite frankly, what we've seen is this massive growth of traditional outsourcing and managed services business. So this year, we're going to be up 6%. We're going to hit 40 billion ACV for the first time ever. We've seen more mega deals than we've ever seen in the history of the index. And where I'm really excited is we've seen a lot of deals in sort of the 20 million to 50 million ACV range. So we're seeing a lot of mid-level deals and just the overall growth of the market. Now the challenge is for 2023 and for 2024 is everybody's looking at their numbers and that doesn't square. What they see is this concern around discretionary spend, a pullback in so many of the areas. But you know, the managed services business has been really resilient to that, and it's up, and we expect it to be up in 2024 as well. It's good news on that front.
Is that because every company is looking to find more efficient ways of running their business or bring in different digital technology? What's underpinning that burgeoning managed services segment?
Yeah, well, that's a good way to think about it. I think the biggest challenge that I see, or the biggest opportunity, I should say, that I see is really the more we digitize the front end of the business, the more every business really becomes a software business. And the more you become a software business, the more it makes sense to use traditional outsourcing, leverage the offshore capabilities that so many of the great organizations that we serve have, and really drive sort of an outsourcing from a different perspective. And we're seeing this growth across all businesses. So if you think about our business, and you and I have been in a long time, you know, it's been IT. It's been apps and infrastructure that's driven it. Well, apps is now 65% of the overall business versus what used to be 40%. So apps are clearly leading, completely flipped. So you're seeing the infrastructure go to the cloud guys. But more importantly, industry-specific BPO is way up. Engineering is way up, and we're seeing spend come from so many different areas of the business, which has been helpful.
Well, you know, you just said engineering. Talk about digital engineering. I was thinking about that when you mentioned every company with a great front end kind of becomes a software company. How many companies become digital engineering firms, or at least the need for that capability?
I love this trend right now for so many reasons. The first thing is you've got this whole convergence between information technology, operations technology, which means how do you run a plant? How do you get from the shop floor to the top floor, as we say all along? How do you drive analytics through that? How do you impact the design phase of a vehicle or autonomous driving? All of those are software problems now, and all of that has been integrated. And then you're seeing this big integration of information technology, or IT, to engineering technology. So how do you think about the entire life cycle of the product? How do you build sustainability into the product? How do you use AI or analytics or data to help drive that through? And that's become such a fantastic growth area for the market right now that we see that really continuing in 2024. Engineering used to be, especially from an outsourcing standpoint, is take a refrigerator, transform that refrigerator to run better, specialize, right, and run in an emerging market. Today, it's about creating software products and software products at scale. You know, whether that's infotainment, whether that's autonomous cars, whether that's smart cities, smart platforms across the board, and that's where we're really seeing the growth. That's so exciting.
You know, you touched on sustainability in the context of developing a product, but more broadly, ESG and sustainability, what are the big trends? It's been top of mind for several years now in a way that it was not before. What do you see in 2024 is how that increases or changes in some way?
Well, you know, if you break it down, I think the environmental aspects are going to continue to be a big concern and a big focus. Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3, emissions, controls will continue to be there. I think we're seeing a little bit of readjustment, though, quite frankly, on the EV side. And I don't necessarily want to drive that, but we are seeing that, you know, when you look at the financials from a lot of the big car manufacturers, EVs aren't selling. There's some pullback there that you got to see. So we're probably going to look at some different technologies over that, and that will continue to be driving that piece of the market. When I think about the diversity, though, and the governance side, I think there's going to continue to be a lot of investment, a lot of exciting things in there. I read a report, and I think it was either in Wall Street Journal or HBR. I apologize, I can't remember which one, but it was talking on the diversity standpoint, really bringing in even workers without college degrees into higher end. So how could we have more of an economic impact? I think in the States, it was 43% of the companies in the survey were saying for higher end corporate jobs, they no longer required, you know, the education and the degrees that they was. That could be fantastic if you think about the impact of what we have on student loans, the drain that it has, give vets and others a really opportunity.
Especially good for me because my daughter's looking at colleges now, so maybe I'll pocket that.
Exactly.
Talk about what you're seeing within the regions of the globe. Obviously, you spend a lot of time in Europe, but you track all the different regions. Are there some that are growing or utilizing different technologies in ways that are markedly different than other regions at this point?
You know, I think from a technology adoption standpoint, I think we're even, quite frankly, in so many ways, because whether it's AI or cloud, we've democratized a lot of the technologies. You know, you flip back 15 to 20 years, not a lot of people could afford SAP or Oracle or the really expensive platforms that were coming out. Today we see that where they can, and so you've got this big democratization of it. AI has clearly allowed that, right? I think November 30th, 2022, day that's going to live in infamy for me, is really the day that we democratized AI in such a way. And you've heard me talk before about the Cambrian explosion of AI. I'm seeing that across the globe. The difference that I see, though, is we do have some economies that want to regulate instead of innovate. And so we're going to see this big push on the regulatory side. The ethical use of AI, how do we think about the impact for labor? What do we think about the impact with worker councils? So my concern is, like so many other technologies, the US and even China are likely to race ahead with adoption, where the Western economies, European especially, more regulated, more pullback. And I think that's going to, again, impact them in some ways that are going to be difficult. Sourcing, though, just back to that for a second, it's been broad. It's been broad spread across Europe, across the Asia Pac, across the US. We've seen good growth in all of those markets. From an industry standpoint, you know, it's going to be banking, it's going to be manufacturing, life sciences that are really driving that growth. But it's been pretty widespread across the geographies.
Steve, what you and the team track hiring trends and talent, and it's been like a yo-yo the last 2 or 3 years. So is it still going to be like a yo-yo, or is it going to stable out? Or
it's trend-wise, that could be one of the difficult things. So we just released a report last week, and the crazy thing about this is we're at the lowest level of hirings since the peak of the pandemic. So you think about the pandemic and all the jobs that came down, the lack of hiring, et cetera. We thought that was the bottom. But in all actuality, we're at that bottom now, and we're crossing lower. So the questions that you have to ask yourself is it the economy? So is it really that big of a pullback on discretionary spend? Is it the impact of AI? Are we really driving that level of productivity? But if you did, you'd probably see that in the margins, and we're not seeing that in the margins. A little early for that. So you got to say, what's really driving those trends and what's going to continue? I think it's going to continue, and I think it's multiple factors. The next 2 to 3 quarters, I think we're still going to be very much in a pullback from discretionary spend. You know, some markets, some economies have already entered recession territory, Germany being one in the EU. Big market, number 3 or number 4 from an outsourcing. So for that economy to be, you know, they've got supply chain issues. They certainly are going to continue to have issues on their manufacturing side. They've got the transition to EV. They've got electrification that they have to continue to think about more broadly across their industry. And they've got the energy crisis still going on with what's happening between Russia and Ukraine. So a lot of pressure in those economies, which means there's not going to be the growth that you would expect. But you know, there's so much talent in this industry and so much talent that we need to bring in. I think AI and other technologies are going to allow us to solve more complex problems, which means we're going to need more people to be part of that. So it'll turn, but I don't think it's going to turn until at least midsummer.
And Steve, I'm sure there are many of our service provider partners are interested in your perspective on, as they enter 2024, as we all enter it, as a service provider, what are some of the key gotchas or hurdles to navigate or signposts to watch?
Yeah, I think the big one right now, and I'm just going to go back to the discretionary spend, because when you look at the growth in managed services and you look at engineering and some of the changes that we have, a lot of that is still discretionary for organizations. And so you can see these mega trends happening. You can see that you've got to be aligned with that. But at the same time, you know that there's not an immediate spend coming with it. Right. So how do you balance this? I got to win this sale. I got to win this deal with the fact that this is pulling back. The other thing that I would say, and this will be a bit of a commercial for you, Paul, is engage with the advisor community. Whether that's ISG or some of our peers and colleagues, use the advisor community to really help understand how to shape deals and how to focus deals. Because I think what we'll see in 2024 is this continued focus around, instead of a deal coming to the market, organizations are shaping those deals. They're looking at what they can do from a cost optimization, or they're looking at vendor consolidation. And they're saying, how can I make a bigger deal out of this and go forward with it? Because they have to save money as well. So engage. You know, I know your team does a great job. So let me throw a question back to you. What do you guys see on the research side as your top research agenda items?
Yeah, I'll tell you, we see so much focus on AI, and it's the early use cases. And every provider that we talk to is hearing from all of their clients, give me the feedback on what I need to do to get started with AI. I want to have the defensive strategy to not do something unethical inadvertently, or just something that'll get me into some kind of hot water. But at the same time, it feels like if you're not aggressively focused on AI and helping your clients navigate through the early use cases, you're going to fall behind. So so much of the research that we're doing is infused with AI. We just had an event. It's our annual event around banking, financial services, and insurance. We've had it for years. Every topic on that agenda was around AI. We should have called it the AI for BFSI, but that's too many acronyms. Just an example in all that we do. So any last words, last trends, things I didn't ask about? What else is happening in 2024?
Well, I think you nailed it. You know, every year I kind of do a keynote around the key trends, and I've done some good ones over the years, and we've missed a few, right? Web3, AR, VR, sort of what we thought were going to happen there. I think that is still going to occur, quite frankly. I don't think the metaverse is going to be what we envisioned it 3 years ago, but when we think about AR, VR, and the capabilities, I think you're going to see it in worker safety. I think you're going to be integrated at the B2B level on lots of activities around the whole user experience. So I think that trend will still continue. But you know, it's easy to say 2023 was the year of AI and 2024 is going to be scaling AI. When we did this last year, I stood on stage. I asked how many people had ever heard of ChatGPT or AI, and there was about 10 hands that went up. You know, 2 to 3 weeks later, there would have been 100 hands going up, right? It grew that rapidly. And if you just look at the hype and the growth, I think just this week, Google came out with Gemini, you know, beat all the scores. You know, it's far surpassing. It's integrated voice, images, text, everything into it. We're just at the beginning, you know. So when I talk about the Cambrian explosion, it's because we're just at the beginning. You know, we know it's got a great future. We've all got to be part of that and see.
Does this mean all the dinosaurs go away? Is that part of it?
They'll come back.
They come back. All right, with that, thank you, Steve. Thanks, everybody. We're looking forward to embracing all the challenges of 2024 and helping everybody win. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Paul. Great seeing you.